Hey everyone, it's Dr. Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be talking about everything I read in October. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I read 2 on my Kindle. Ooh, don't fall off. I've dropped this thing so many times, which is why there's a case on it. So I read 7 books. I usually read a little bit more, but Alchemised did take me a while since it's over 1,000 pages long. So let's get into it, and we are going to start with Alchemised. I'm not going to talk about it too much since I did make an entire video dedicated to it, but the short version, 3.5 stars. I did really enjoy it. I personally, which is bad to admit because I work in a bookshop. I only just started working there, but I'm honestly not that clued up on like what's coming out. So this book came out like the 2nd or the 3rd week I was working there, and my colleague was like, you gotta read it. She didn't really tell me much about it, so I was like, okay. So I grabbed it on my lunch break and I started reading it, and I worked out pretty quickly it was a Dramani fanfic. However, I don't care. I love Dramani. I've loved Dramani since I was like 13, 14 years old. I still remember the first time I heard about Dramani. So I was already into fanfiction by this point. I understood what it was. And I was on Facebook like one night after school, and I was on like some sort of Harry Potter page or whatever, I don't know what it was. And someone posted a link to a Dramani fanfiction, and I was like, ugh, why would you do that? My experience with fanfiction at that point was very much like using it for Sherlock, because season 1 I think had it, or was season 2 out? I can't remember. So many seasons of it were out, and there was just such long breaks between each season, and I was like, I can't wait. I'll just write the rest myself. And I didn't pair anyone differently together like what a lot of people use fanfiction for, but at the time I was using it to continue the plot because I was getting sick of waiting for the next season of Sherlock. I never considered you could use it to use different romantic relationships. So when I first saw the concept of Draco and Hermione, I was like, how dare you? But then it took me a week and I was like, maybe. And I went back and read it, and here we are. So I didn't know, I don't care about that. I did think it was painstakingly obvious from all the characters because, like I said, I went into this not knowing, but I did think it was great. It definitely didn't need to be this long, and if it was going to be this long, I definitely think SenLinYu should have used all of that space to make some of the bits that are actually meant to be horrific and dark, actually horrific and dark. I won't say too much. I like these videos to kind of be spoiler free, just trying to encourage you to read them if I think the book is good, which I do think this book is good. Really enjoyed it. So even though I'd say the characters are still quite firmly Harry Potter characters with different names on them, I do really feel that the plot and the world is very much like SenLinYu completely made it their own. So I did really enjoy it, and one thing I said in like my full review of the book is I hope there's a sequel because first of all I do want to find out what happens next. I did find the ending a little bit dissatisfying, and I also want to see how SenLinYu handles more original characters since the other ones were just from Harry Potter. But I did really enjoy it. And the next one I'm going to talk about is a bit of a different book for me, and it's The Christmas Clue by Nicola Upson, which I gave 4 stars. And you're probably like, why is this a different book for you? Because it's a book set entirely at Christmas. This is a Christmas book, and in all my years of reading I have never actually read an entire book that is set at Christmas. Why? I don't know. I read books where Christmas happens, for example in Harry Potter, since we were just talking about it. Obviously Christmas happens whilst they're at Hogwarts, but that's not a Christmas book, just Christmas happens and they carry on with their lives. This is a book entirely set at Christmas. So this one, as you may have guessed by the title, is a Christmas murder mystery, and interestingly it's actually the main characters are the 2 founders of Cluedo, or Clue if you're not from the UK, which are Arthur and Elva Pratt, who are a married couple. So basically Cluedo, from what I could glean from the book and also the Wikipedia pages which I read after I finished it, it basically seemed that they basically used to host murder mystery parties at this place called the Tudor Hall Hotel. Everyone really enjoyed them, and the original board of the game, as in like the rooms and stuff that Elva drew, was based on the floor plan of this hotel. Apparently they initially wanted the game to be called Murder at Tudor Hall, but it got renamed to Cluedo, which I think is better since it's much shorter to say. And in this book they are basically, it's during World War II, and they are invited back to the hotel to host one more murder mystery party before the hotel is basically turned into maybe a convalescence is the right word. I talked about this in another video. I think I used the word sanatorium, which I don't think is correct. Basically, during World War II, soldiers, even if they'd been hurt and had been operated on successfully, they still needed time to recover away from the front lines. So they were sent back to England and they were put in these like big stately homes where often these more aristocratic families still live, and they would give up a portion of the home where these soldiers could recover in peace. So the hotel is going to be turned into that after Christmas. It's like, this is going to be the last one until the war is hopefully one day over, because of course they don't know it's going to be over yet. However, it starts when they arrive in the town and a murder has already occurred, like an actual murder. So they solve it. From what I gleaned from their Wikipedia, that didn't happen. It's just for the plot of this book, but I found it really interesting, and their use of Arthur and Elva Pratt, I thought it was so cool, and I also got to learn something. The reason why it's not a full 5 stars is because, so it's a mystery, obviously. However, there were some clues you didn't find out about until they were telling the police. So for example, when they rock up at the town, I think it was called Rottingdean, they stop first before they go onto the hotel at like the sweet shop, the confectioners. Cool. And as they are pulling up in the car, another car is leaving and they see a man come out of the shop and get in the car. However, when they go into the sweet shop and find the dead body, they obviously call the police, and then Elva starts divulging to the police important information that there was actually a driver, and the driver was wearing something rather significant. So I'm like, why didn't you mention that when we saw them pulling away? Like, it was only told to the reader and not shown to the reader. It happens quite a few times with the clues, so it was just a bit like, if you're not going to give me the clues, like when I read a mystery, I like to try and solve it as well as I'm reading it. If you're not going to give me all the clues until later on, how do I join in? But otherwise, it was really, really good. And another one, oh my god, my favourite book from this month. The Elephant Whisperer by Lawrence Anthony. So I wasn't sure what my opinion of this book was going to be, because even though I love elephants, which is the reason why I picked it up, sorry it's quite shiny, it's a memoir. I'm not a big fan of memoirs, okay? I'm not a big non-fiction person, and if I am going to read non-fiction, it's usually not a memoir. The only memoir I've ever liked in my life is Jackie Daydream, the Jacqueline Wilson one, which I think I read 3 times in a row when I was like 14. Love that thing. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this, but oh my gosh, I loved it. I think the reason I loved it is because it didn't feel like a memoir. It just felt like a fictional book about elephants. Solid 5 stars, and I also cried. It's very, very difficult to make me cry at a book, but this one, oh my god, I was in floods of tears. So basically, Lawrence Anthony, the main character, he is British, I think, but he grew up in I was about to say South Africa. When I say South Africa, I don't mean the country South Africa, I mean south of the African continent. The southern area of the continent, but not strictly speaking South Africa, the country. I hope that makes sense. But eventually one day he leaves, he goes back to England, he gets a regular job, he gets married, he has 2 children, but he's like, this isn't for me. He gets divorced, he meets this French lady, and together they decide to move to Zululand, although I don't think it's called Zululand anymore, and buy a game reserve. And basically their objective with this is to try and conserve African wildlife. One thing I found really interesting, and I've never been to any African country, is that due to poaching and things like that, a lot of people from a lot of African countries have never just like seen an elephant before, or any other like typical like African wildlife that is native to their countries. They just haven't seen them ever, which I thought was so interesting. So basically he has this reserve, they are having poachers, but largely things going well. Then one day he gets a call, he's like, hey, we have this herd of basically feral elephants, will you take them? And then she's like, and if you don't take them, they're going to be killed. So he's like, well, I guess I have to take these elephants. And the reason they're kind of feral, and obviously they're wild animals, I'm not pretending they're not, but they are very angry because of the way they've been treated by humans before. So it is a huge risk to take these elephants. And they definitely have a lot of issues at first, but eventually things go well and the story is just so heartwarming. Absolutely loved it. If you like elephants, I definitely think you will love this book. Even if you don't like non-fiction, because I hate memoirs and I still absolutely loved it. Now the next book I want to talk about is one I really didn't like, which is The Woman in Black. And I'm going to hold it this way because my version has no cover. I don't know why. Anyway, The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I only gave it 1.5 stars. I I was bored reading it basically. So it's meant to be a horror book, I think. I don't know, because it wasn't scary. And it's about this guy, and he's working for a solicitor in London, and this lady dies, Mrs. Drablow, I think she's called, and he basically travels from London down to where she lives in the middle of nowhere, or where she lived rather, to basically sort through her assets, find her will, so he knows what needs to go to her surviving relatives. Cool. However, when he gets there, the townspeople are like, you going there? Mm. And then also the house is a bit like Lindisfarne or like Mont Saint-Michel, where it's kind of out of the way of this town, and the tide goes in and out, and you can only access the path from the town to the house at certain times of the day. So it's not just easy as like, oh, if something bad happens, I'll just leave, because you might not be able to leave. And things do go badly. Things I enjoyed about the book, I enjoyed the scene with the dog on the marshes, and I enjoyed the ending, even though I managed to predict it pretty easily. But I was just like, I was so bored all the way through. I was just like, no. I showed it to my colleague, she was like, oh, what are you reading? I was like, Woman in Black. She's like, oh, it's scary. And I was like, is it? Because I didn't get that, unfortunately. The next book is The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, which I think is the 4th book in the Mistborn series. So you have the Mistborn trilogy, so Mistborn or The Final Empire, The Will of Ascension, which is one of my favourite books of all time, and The Hero of Ages. That's the trilogy, and I'm assuming it was intended to just be that, but then Brandon Sanderson is just like, I got more, which he always seems to have more. So he wrote another one, which is set, I think, about 300 years later after the end of The Hero of Ages. I think. I'm not entirely confident. So this one is obviously about completely different characters, although judging by the names of some of them, they definitely seem related to the characters from the original trilogy, which I really liked. And the main character in this one is called Waxillium. Everyone thankfully just calls him Wax for short, because I think that name is hilarious. Every time anyone called him Waxillium, I was like, I'm sorry, you're called that. I don't make fun of people's names in real life, but I do in fiction, okay? Anyway, he is basically, he spent some time out in what is called the Roughs, which is, basically sounds like the countryside, but rough countryside. There's a lot of crime there, and he's not called a police officer, that's basically what he is. However, he's actually from a noble house, and when his uncle dies, he is basically the heir, and he has to go back and sort out the mess his uncle made for him. And he's like, well, I guess I have to get married maybe. Okay. But at the same time, there's a lot of crime going on in like the centre of the city, which I've already forgotten the name of. Hold on, let me find it. There's a cool map at the front, I think. Elendel. Elendel? It's fantasy, I don't know how to say anything. But I really enjoyed it, and I loved all the hints and throwbacks to the original trilogy. I really enjoyed the originals. I definitely don't think it was as good as the other ones, it's also nowhere near as long. But I still enjoyed it. And I had the same problem with this book as I had with Mistborn or The Final Empire, the first one, in that it takes ages for it really to start. In The Final Empire, I started reading that on a coach trip to Scotland, and I wasn't tired, I had enough sleep, I was fine, I'd done some Duolingo, I'd had my breakfast on the coach, and I was like, time to crack it open. When I start a new fantasy series, I like to set aside a good chunk of time so I can really get into the world before I take a break. Like when I flew to the Caribbean in February, I started Fourth Wing. I just really wanted to take some time and really sink my teeth into it. That's what I like to do when it's a bigger fantasy world. And I fell asleep at page 35. Because I was bored, nothing happened, and nothing really happened until page 60. And I found the opening of this, not the same numbers, but very similar in that it takes a while for things to start happening. So he just like seems to take forever to set the scene, but once he's done it, he's like, right, okay, now we can start. So I'm hoping the sequel just gets straight into things. So in The Final Empire, Brando Sando spent a very long time setting the scene, like about 65 pages I think it was. Then he got into it, but because all of that had already been done, Well of Ascension just got straight into it, same with The Hero of Ages. So I am hoping the next one just gets straight into it. I don't have to do any of that. Then the final two books I want to talk about, I read both on my Kindle, and they were both, well, one of them was a Princess Diaries book, and I'm counting the other one as a Princess Diary book. So the first one was the final ever Princess Diary book, which was the Princess Diaries, the Quarantine Diaries, which I gave 4 stars too, and the other one was Ransom My Heart, which is by Cabot, the author of The Princess Diaries, and technically also by me, Thermopolis, which I gave 3.5 stars. So I'm going to talk about the Quarantine Diaries first, and I really enjoyed it actually, although when I was reading it, I was like, I have no memories of the pandemic. And I'm not really sure why. Like, I told my mum about it when I was reading the book, and she was like, well, it's probably because you're traumatised from it. But I'm not really sure why I'm traumatised. Because I didn't get COVID. No one I knew got COVID, so as you may imagine from that, no one I knew died. I was super lucky. So I'm like, what on earth am I traumatised about? Like, during the pandemic, I sat at home and started my PhD research. I just read the whole time. I read journal articles for like 8 months solid. And watched TV. That was it. Why am I traumatised? Maybe that's also why I don't have any memories, because I didn't really do much. Other people are like, oh yeah, I started learning to bake, or I started my exercise journey. I'm like, yeah, I did PhD work. I would have been doing it even if the pandemic didn't happen. But just as I was reading the book, it made me think about it, and I was like, huh, okay. I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed Mia's response to the pandemic. Genovia is a very small country. I would assume around the similar size as Monaco. It's not real, so I guess I don't really know for sure. And they only have one hospital, it's not very big, so Mia's like, we absolutely cannot have cases here, and they do really well. Grandma is just up to her old tricks again with boys who are far too young for her. I know they're technically men, but I'm like, when it comes to that kind of age gap, I'm like, I'm sorry, at that point, that man is a boy. No. I did really like it, but it ends really abruptly, so I was a bit like, okay. But anyway, I did like a full video on why The Princess Diaries is absolutely amazing, so if you want more information about my one true love, aka The Princess Diaries, please go watch that video. And then the final one, like I said, is Ransom My Heart. So the reason why I'm kind of classing it as Princess Diaries is in the 10th Princess Diaries books, when Mia is in her senior year, for her senior project, she picks to write a novel, and Ransom My Heart, an historical romance, is the novel that Mia writes. So if you read the blurb, it's like, oh my god, Mia Thermopolis has asked me, Meg Cabot, to co-write this novel with her. Obviously it's not the same person. I just thought it was so cute. So it's basically about this girl called Fionnuala, and she is the youngest of like 6 sisters. And their older brother, after the death of their parents, who is a miller, takes over as head of the family. So Fionnuala basically runs around the town in trousers, helping people and hunting animals. She's not very ladylike like she's supposed to be, but her next oldest sister ends up pregnant, and she's not married when this is set. Big no-no. Obviously it doesn't matter now, but when it's set, that was a huge deal. So she's like, I don't have a dowry, this guy isn't gonna marry me, what do I do? So Fionnuala and her sister basically put together a plot for Fionnuala, since she's good at hunting, to go out and kidnap a rich man and hold him for ransom. And as you may have guessed, Fionnuala does do that, but her and her captive fall in love with each other. It was really cute, but again, the ending of this is really abrupt, and it just seemed to drag on for quite a while. I didn't think it was necessary. It was very easy to read, a lot of Meg Cabot stuff is, but I was a bit like, okay. But I am looking forward to reading more of her stuff next year. I don't know much of her other series, but I have seen this book floating around on TikTok called Educating Caroline, which I know is by her. But anyway, that is everything I read in October. I'd love to know what you all read in October and what you thought of what I read, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!